Only the host.
Sure.
No, I do. I got it. So we're recording now. Today, in the United States at least, it's Tuesday, October 15th, 2019. Contour meeting. And yeah, here we go. So we have quite a few things to talk about today. A few of us will be talking. On my screen is the HackMD. Hopefully you can just read that URL. If you want, I can post it in the Zoom, so you don't have to type in that long ID. But other than that, let's get going. So first on the agenda, assume that's going to be Dave. What have you been working on?
Hey Tim, morning. So what have we done in the last, since we spoke the last, I think it was 3 weeks ago. So Contour 1.0 release candidate, the first release candidate was released last week. This is, I've been talking, for those who come to this meeting a couple of times, been harping on pretty strongly about this notion of we are really in the polishing and preparation phase for 1.0, and RC1 really is our first stab at that. This is our first release candidate. We'll be doing another one in a couple of weeks, but this is really, if you want to get a taste of what Contour 1.0 is going to be like in November, this is your chance to step in and find out. We should also, it's not on the schedule here, but I want to point out a new addition to our team. James, would you stand up? There we go. It
wasn't very helpful.
Less impressive.
Hi, everybody.
It's less impressive in Now, everyone watch while Tim types his password in.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment and while I log in. So me hosting this was a little bit of a last minute decision. So,
yes.
So welcome, James. Super excited to have you on the team.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm happy to start learning all about Contour and doing a bit more Kubernetes work. So feel free to hit me up on Slack for things for code reviews, and I'll try and answer questions if I can figure out the answer.
Yep, you can always find us on the Kubernetes Slack, and if Slack's not your drug of choice, you can always GitHub is where we do all our communication. Yep, we try and do as much as possible there, which is basically everything. So you can always reach out and find us there. All right, groovy. I'm going to talk a little bit about what has changed between the beta one
Welcome, Michael.
and I'm going to talk a little bit about what has changed between the beta one and the release candidate one. And apart from like the usual slew of bug fixes that you'll find in the release notes, the big change is HTTP proxy has moved from alpha to V1. We didn't go through the beta change, partially because every time you do this, you lose people. Like, we change the kind and the version. That means your old objects don't work. We could have gone alpha, beta, V1, but that means you would have just had to rewrite them all the way. Where we are at with HTTP CRD in what we're calling V1 is that we're now in a position that we're comfortable with the state of the object, the state of the CRD, the state of the YAML, the schema, in that we believe, in as much as that any engineer can be certain of anything, that the changes we may make in the future, just like the changes to the V1 objects in Kubernetes, will be additive only. We're now in a point that we can give a lot of confidence about, your objects that you write today in HTTP proxy V1 are going to keep working for the foreseeable future. I mean, years, decades, whatever. There might be a V2 or there might be a new kind of object if Kubernetes adds their ingress V2, but HTTP proxy is stable and we're supporting that going forward. There have been 3 specific changes that I need to call out if we're using beta 1. The first one is that the per service health check has moved to a per route check. And similarly, the per service strategy, that's the load balancer strategy, has moved up again to a per route one. And there's a reason behind this. This is when you have health checking engaged on a backend service, Envoy has this behavior where if all of the backends go stale, it ignores the health checking. Now, this seems like a kind of crisis of confidence at the software level, that Envoy now doesn't trust itself that its health checking is working, because all of them are failing. And it fails into this fail open mode where it ignores the health check and sends the information to the back end. Without getting into the specifics, and we could talk later about that, we can see us on the issue, we may have to change the way that we generate the configuration in Envoy, such that we take all of the backend services that you list and we would merge them on the Envoy side into a single cluster. And that would mean the health check and load balancer properties apply to that cluster. I'm not saying we will do that, but we may have to do that if that is the only way we can resolve this issue. And because of that, because we're moving the HTTP CRD to V1, we've moved those two properties to the place that would reflect that change. Now, what I'm hoping is that when we resolve this issue and figuring out how to configure Envoy to not have this bizarre fail open behavior, we will be able to retain one backend cluster per Kubernetes service. And my intent there is that we will then add back health check policy and load balancer policy at the service level. So you'll be able to specify them at the route level, which is basically for all of them. Or if you want, you'll be able to specify at the individual level. We just don't know, but this is an insurance policy to make sure that the first week or two out of the gate, when we resolve this underlying Envoy configuration issue, we don't have to do a deprecation to HTTP CRD. So that's why those two have moved. Similar.
Before you go on, questions about that?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Okay, like there are no questions at the moment, but we can come back to it. In the Q&A section. Similarly, prefix rewrite. I'm just going to be straight up. I did a bad job with that a year ago. It has some unfixable problems. So in HTTP proxy v1, it has been removed. There is currently no replacement. The workaround is to continue to use ingress route, which has the broken prefix rewrite for whatever values that you manage to make it work. My suspicion is that we will have, when we add it back, it won't come back as just prefix rewrite. It'll come back as a more complicated object, because there is this problem of the trailing slash. When you rewrite /foo to slash, say you want to present just a web application, but on a sub URL, there's a problem. Does it end in a slash? If it ends in a slash, what can happen is that the URL presented to the back end may have two slashes in a row. Now, canonically, in the URL terms, that doesn't matter, but certain web applications, not naming any names, Node.js, don't deal with this properly. They treat two slashes in a row different from just a single slash to canonicalize the URL. So to deal with this, we cannot of this into a single field, which was just rewrite to name. So we've had to remove that again, so we don't have to just deprecate this feature straight out of the gate. I know this is probably a feature that people are using. That this is a blocker for them moving on to HTTP proxy. I recognize that too. It's a blocker now for us moving, deprecating and removing ingress route, and it's a priority for us to fix. But we're going to do it properly so that it works, rather than in this case where it had very limited application. So I'll take a pause again, and I should link up the issues. Yeah, I'll do that in the minutes afterwards. Yeah, I'll take a pause. Are there any questions about this change?
No, just that we need prefix rewrite.
Yeah, but so.
Our specific use case there is for our container registry. They've got two rewrites they use, and yeah, so we need this back.
I had hoped that there could be some heuristic logic that would be able to do like some kind of logic. We could say always add the slash case or always remove the slash case or something like that. But every time we look at it, it doesn't seem to be possible. So we're going to have to come up with a more complicated field that describes the more nuances of prefix rewriting because of the problems of collapsing URLs. You probably know the issue I'm talking about. I should have linked it here. But the goal here is to recognize that when I implemented that feature a year ago, I did a bad job of it, and it can't be fixed in the way that it is now. So the only way to do it is to tear it out and replace it.
Michael, just to make sure we cover all the bases, it would be helpful to have a sample of some of your use cases for prefix rewrite. Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Cool. So in all of this, in all of these changes from Ingress Route to HTTP proxy, we've been keeping a document of if you start with an Ingress Route, how you change that into a HTTP proxy. That's linked below. And the last thing I want to mention in this section before I hand it off to somebody else is that we've written down the support policy for Contour. Now, this is not a change in our support policy. It's literally just writing down what was implicit, which is basically, this is an open source project. We expect you to be on the latest version. We're a small team. Maintaining backports has an exponential cost for the support matrix, and the support policy is, we expect you to be using the latest version. And in the policy document, we define what the latest version is. Now, the counterbalance to that is that on our side, as the development team, we have to make that super easy for you to stay up to date. And that is something that I'll talk about in the what's coming up section. But I wanted to call that out because explicitly calling these things out rather than just them being implicit tacit knowledge is important. So that's just for people's reference. So that's all the things that I have to cover. I'm going to hand it back to Tim, who's got some other stuff.
Yeah, any questions about the support policy topic before we go on? Just wanted to shout out for Steve's great CNCF webinar. There's a link in the HackMD right here, so go take a look. It's great.
Yeah, that was really good. Thanks, Steve.
Documentation moves. That's what's next on here. I think that's you, Dave.
Yeah. So in terms of, rather than looking back at the past, looking forward into the future, as well as all the code work we've been doing for getting ready for 1.0, I want Project Contour Diary, the website, to be more useful. As it is now, it's sort of a landing page, but there are two things that I want out of it. One is to resolve the kind of impedance mismatch between the quick start, which is how we tell people to get started with Contour, which tells them to go and use the latest, and the default presentation if you go to GitHub, which shows you master, because if you change the default branch, things get even weirder, which shows you master, which basically shows you documentation for a thing that's coming up in the future. And we're going to resolve that by moving all of the user-focused documentation out of GitHub into the website. So the website, the version that it recommends, and the documentation that goes along with that will move quickly into sync. And that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on the last couple of days.
Just to be clear, the source for the website is in GitHub, though. It's
correct.
Yes, so it is still in GitHub. It is just in the site subdirectory. So you'll still be able to look back in time.
Yeah, there's this marvelous chicken and egg problem of how do you publish a website for a version you haven't released. And so that's just kind of that's just annoying plumbing on our side. But the goal to make it things easier and more useful for all the Contour users is that the version on the website and the documentation that it talks about are going to be in sync now, rather than having to split across this. Something else in doing this work is that we've identified a set of documentation which aren't really version specific. Like, they don't refer to a particular version. They're either perennial, like they're just good advice for all Contour users, or they are documentations like the support policy, how we work in GitHub, how we the ingress route upgrade documents, and those have been also moved to the website just so that the goal is to clean out that docs directory, or to make sure it's focused only on like developer documentation, not so much end user documentation. So those have been moved to the resources section of the website. And similarly, we found a bunch of documentation, like for example, how to set up TLS between Envoy and Contour, or how to set up Cert Manager. I talked about a little bit about this in the last community meeting, which is this is a set of documentation which I think represents kind of guides, like how-tos, like information on how, like, I have a particular problem, or I am an operator and I need to make sure that this traffic is secure on my network. Like you come looking for a solution. So we're in the process of moving and rewriting that documentation to directly answer that. And I'm not sure whether it's merged or not. I pushed the PR last night. It's a section called Guides. Shamelessly stealing the name that Console uses on their website. I thought it was really good, like Learn or Guides. Like it's a section, again, not reference documentation. That is losing. It's going to live in its own like version, like docs for V1, docs for V1.1, whatever. There's going to be the reference documentation, but these are again guides on how to use Contour to do a thing. And I want to, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I want to invite everyone in the Contour community that this is an opportunity. You can contribute to the project. We'll put your name up in lights. You can have an off the credit. We would love contributions from people who are, not so much case studies, but if there's a kind of analog of a case study of like, here's how I did a thing with Contour. We would love to help you write that up as a guide so that others can learn from your experience. I'm pretty sure I know how to do this in Jekyll, but we'll give you an author credit. You put your name up in lights, you can link to it. You're going to be just like we'll put your star on the sidewalk. So this is an open call for contribution.
Very cool, Dave. I'm really excited about the I call it how do I documentation. I think that's really going to be super valuable to the project. I can take the next one. It's really please try RC1. Please try RC1. You know, there are changes. We're locking down the API, so we would love your feedback. The earlier the better, because RC2 is coming out in 10 days. So there you go. Well, maybe 9 days, because that's 25th October, Australia time.
Yeah, around the 25th. It always depends on, you know, Friday, Saturday, whenever we put the finished writing of the release notes. In the spirit of dates and releases, 1.0 is scheduled for early November. The actual milestone says the 1st of November. The reason for that is if you go back in time and look at the old Hefteo blog post, you'll see that Contour, the first version of Contour was released on the 1st of November, 2017. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there. But more practically, there's a bunch of other interactions we have to have. There might be some more promotional work that we do over those couple of weeks. So the date will be, you know, at the start of November. But we're still on track for that. And just to finish, the stuff that I have to talk about is the 1.1 ATA. This is still something we're discussing inside the team, and we have to, once 1.0 ships, we have to then do a prioritization process and look at the backlog. But if you look at the calendar, you'll see that November is a kind of a full month. It's kind of this big party. It's called KubeCon. It's going to be at the end of the month, and there's kind of another big party called Thanksgiving, which happens quite soon after that. The end result of this is that, being realistic, we're not expecting to do a 1.1 until early next year. The reason I mention this is, I've said this a few times, that, you know, we want to, ingress route is deprecated. It's not going to get any fixes. We're just going to maintain it. And our goal is we want to remove it. Like, we want to move forward. There are now, it's now just not just a matter of saying, please, would you move off it, but there are also features which users need, which we need to have an analog in HTTP proxy. But the goal, what I'm mentioning this is I want to assure people that ingress route is not going away until we have the replacement for prefix rewrite, and any other features at the moment I don't know of which are missing. The other thing is that people are very worried because I've written in the past things like, once 1.0 is out, ingress route is going away. It may happen that ingress route is removed from the code base, but support for that will continue, again, as I said, until we have those features ported across to HTTP proxy. But the countermand to that is that, as I said, ingress route is deprecated, not getting any new features. Its development is done, finished, finito, finished. It's not, we're not going to be backporting changes to it. So we expect everybody to move onto HTTP proxy. And perhaps in retrospect, renaming the type was a mistake because it kind of is somehow suggesting that they're different. They're really not. HTTP proxy is just V1 of ingress route. So we're going to be talking more about that in the new year. Some people have suggested, depending on the need, we might write a translation tool to help people translate their YAML from ingress route to HTTP proxy. That seems, this is not a binding commitment, but that seems like a fairly straightforward thing to do. When we get an idea of the corpus of ingress route out there, I think there's probably quite a bit. It's been out there for about a year, but the sum total is that we are motivated to get that ingress route code out of Contour by 1.1 or at least 1.2, because that has Contour supports, I looked at it, we support 4 different ingress objects: extensions, networking KXIO, ingress route, and HTTP proxy. Ingress v1 is going to be coming at some point in the next couple of months, and then ingress v2 probably by the end of the year. There's a maintenance cost in supporting potentially six different flavors of ingress and transposing between all of them. So we want to be mindful of not carrying that maintenance cost as long as we can. But to underscore, as I've said, it's deprecated. We're not going to be we're not going to be backporting things to ingress route, but we're not going to remove it until we have a solid path forward for anybody who's using it because they're like, well, I can't do this in HTTP proxy. And that's all I have to say. And I don't know if we're going to do questions now or if there's some other stuff to talk about, but we can spend the rest of the time talking about any of the things that I mentioned. Yeah.
I don't think you really talked about changing the minor release cadence, or at least not very much. So the monthly release.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about that. The monthly release cadence made a lot of sense, we thought, when we were quickly iterating, adding new features, and it was pre 1.0. But there are a lot of folks depending on this in production now, and it is hard for them to keep up. Additionally, it is, it's a load on the team. Now we have not picked what the new cadence will be. Somewhere between 1 and 3 months is it, no more than 3 months. That is not yet ratified, but to help the development team and our community, that's what we're doing. We've run across folks in the community that are running 0.12, which is 3 versions back, really 4 or 5 months ago.
0.9.
It's really not that many months ago. But
what we also see is that like Kubernetes clusters are not keeping up. Like 1.16 Kubernetes is out. Still, we still have a large corpus of people using 1.12, 1.13, especially if you're using managed offering. So we know that the quarterly release cycle of Kubernetes is quite aggressive, and us being even more aggressive than that may not be actually helping our users. But the thing I do want to underscore is the line after that, which is, this is in no way saying we're only going to do one release every 3 months, one release every n months. We're still going to issue patch releases as required. We're still going to, but I fully expect to be doing 1 or 2 of them in November and December, as we respond to issues and late things in 1.0. Like just like Apple, never use the .0 of any product. Wait for the .1. I'm as a rational engineer, I realized that the patch releases are just a fact of life.
This also gives the team with the community more time to sketch out big ideas and actually think about them and do deeper analysis before implementation. But just like Dave said, we keep fixing bugs along the way, and patch releases keep coming. Part of this is we're going to get a little bit more, we're going to follow semantic versioning a little bit better than we necessarily have in the past. So you'll have some pretty strong guarantees about what a patch versus a minor release means. So.
Yeah. So again, if you like, to repeat myself, if you have questions about like when are you gonna, I've heard you deleting ingress route. When's that going to happen? Just come and ask me. We're actively trying to get everyone onto HTTP proxy v1, but we want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind. We're going to won't be removing support from that from Contour until there is a viable use case for the few people who are stuck with the features that we haven't ported across yet.
And if there is community desire for some sort of migration tool, we already have some existing art from the Valero project, which went through a 1.0 release and a CRD change and open source the actual CRD migration tool, which is called very skillfully CRD migration tool that we may utilize here. Very creatively is the word I was looking for. So
it's razor sharp.
So I can take the next one. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say a comment on the migration tool. So we had a call with one of our container registry people, and it's not really a ingress route to HTTP proxy change. It's changing default from Nginx to Contour. So they've found in testing that unless we inject in the default cert string into the config, you can't just switch the ingresses on our users. And the network policy breaks as well. So we're sort of thinking we need to use a mutating webhook to inject those things into their deployments as we switch from Nginx to Contour. So really just an FYI. I don't know whether you guys have seen that or if there's another way.
Could you tell me more about the certificate ciphers?
Yeah, no. So if you look at like an ingress route or a HTTP proxy sort of YAML, it's got a default cert string. And so we've got people using just vanilla Nginx or not Nginx, vanilla ingress YAML. It doesn't have that string. And when we flip to Contour, the Contour's configs don't work without that string.
Sorry, do you mean, Matt, that the ingress has the feature and HTTP proxy and ingress route don't have it? Is that what you mean?
Let me. I'm not. I can't pull up.
Is this an annotation? Oh,
no.
This is the garbage ingress default backend.
Yes, I think so.
Right.
Hang on. Let me have a look here.
There's a default cert, and there's a default cert you can apply as well.
Yeah, like in our, I'm not logged into my work VDI here, but we have a string to the default certs for Contour.
This is the cert that you get when you don't, for clients that don't use SNI, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, correct. So it was just like a little gotcha that I hadn't actually thought of. So when we actually flip the switch,
don't think we ever supported that.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a
I'm going to have to ask you for. Yeah, but
I'm not describing it very well, but it's a gotcha that we're going to have to do for all of our customers currently running vanilla ingress. when we do the switch, we're going to have to mutate in the default cert line into their configs somehow.
We should definitely talk more about this, because knowing nothing about the migration plans you put in place, I would not migrate both your ingress controller and your objects at the same time. If there are limitations in the way that we've done ingress, we should be talking about them, and I'm sure that there are. But that to do both at the same time, that's a big migration burden. Yeah.
The other one too is we've got like a default denial network policy, so people's existing policy won't work either. So we're going to work through that. Again, these are
okay, so you have to have you have to create an allow policy from the Envoy containers. Yeah. Okay.
But the default cert string is the one I guess is somewhat relevant. But yeah. And just one last comment. That Envoy Envoy panic setting, I think you can override that through Bootstrap config.
I really hope that we can. So maybe Steve can talk to this, because he's looked at it a bunch, and every time I ask him, I'm like, Steve, can you explain this to me again?
Which one is this again?
My understanding from talking to Matt Klein is the idea behind it. Say you've got, I guess five nodes in a cluster, and 3 die. It's past a default 50% threshold. At that point, it panics and says everything's there, so you don't sort of run out of capacity type thing, I think. But I believe it's overridable in Bootstrap, but I need to check.
Was this the removal of the health checks component we're talking about, like the multiple upstreams?
Yeah, this is the health check problem we had back with the customer in Japan.
Yeah. So what happens what we set up in Contour is multiple upstreams. So there's a multiple route object in Envoy, and for each service in Kubernetes, or this could be anything in terms of other situations, but for today's call, we'll talk about Kubernetes. But each service is basically a cluster in Envoy, and then we can define health checks against each cluster. And then what happens is if an entire cluster goes unhealthy, Envoy doesn't take that out of the route. It still applies weights to each cluster as if it was healthy. So say you have 3 different clusters, it'll hit cluster 1, which is healthy, cluster 2, which is healthy, and then cluster 3 will just fail. And then it goes back to 1. So I asked some folks, I think I talked to Matt about this one specifically once at one point. And their recommendation was that, yes, that's happening. That's kind of how it's designed, or how it's working today. And the result to fix it would be to use a locality-based cluster. So what we would do is have one single cluster in Envoy, but with multiple localities. So each locality would kind of match each different upstream.
Wow.
And then we can apply weights to each different locality, and then essentially we'd have the same, upstream weighting across multiple services, but your health check now would work. So if an entire service went offline, Envoy would then route and just take that out of service and not route to it.
Much more complicated config though.
Yeah. So I mean, on the surface, it's the same API spec, but behind the scenes, it's a lot more, I think, running around and
I
making
recall
that happen.
that panic threshold was only overridable through runtime initially, and then I think they exposed it through the Bootstrap. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that the panic ones.
We definitely. I'm sorry. So we definitely merging everything into a single cluster is not ideal, because we would have to share the health check across that, share the load balancing strategy, and in fact share the upstream the upstream certificate validation, which in fact is not something that you can share across a generic set of backends.
Yeah.
So we are going to work extremely hard to try and find a different way around this. What we've done in making this preemptive change in HTTP proxy is basically insurance. We hope we don't have to call on it, and we can put it back at a service level, but it's insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the Envoy's behavior, when a set of, when all the members of a cluster, which is part of a weighted set, go unhealthy, it considers itself to be at fault and says, well, that health check's failed for all of them, I must be at fault, and puts them all back to healthy. And of course, they return 500s. this is bizarre behavior, and I hope we can find a way around it.
Yeah, I think the way Matt described it to me was slightly different, and it's meant for larger scale as well. So say you've got a 5,000 node upstream cluster, and 2,600 start failing. Do this. It's not really designed for sort of small Kubernetes service deployments.
Yeah, that panic is so you don't get a false positive. So like if things start failing, it doesn't reflect negatively across the rest of the cluster. So yeah, we can change it though. I believe there's a threshold we can set. We can actually turn that off if we'd want to in config. Yeah, for sure.
So we're definitely looking into what ways to resolve the underlying issue. Just the way that it exposes itself to you in HTTP proxy is this move from per service to per route. And we hope that we can put it back to per service once we have a better solution. So hopefully, I mean, the flip side is hopefully if you had a bunch of backend services and you had the same health check and load balancing strategies across all of them, and you're just kind of tired of having to type it over and over again, moving it up to the per route is going to be more convenient for you. But we understand that's also taking away some flexibility. The reason it was specified in per service is for the Gimbal use case, we actually have clusters made up of multiple. Some come from Kubernetes, others come from other also and OpenStack clusters, and they're kind of combined into synthetic objects. So you actually are health checking independent entities. They're not just the same pods, just in different groups. They actually represent different services with different revisions, different networking characteristics. So that was the original design.
Sure.
What are we doing on time? Are there any other questions?
I have a question, but I have a comment. Michael talked a little bit about the migrating from other ingress controllers. So I think that'll be a really interesting contribution to the docs, referring back to Dave's previous doc information. So yeah, anyone who's interested in kind of talking about their experiences in migrating between ingress controllers, that'd be really great to capture in issues or documentation or guides or somehow.
Absolutely, and we can meet you anywhere along the spectrum. If you just want to talk to us in Slack, or you just want to raise a bug and say, hey, this thing didn't work, all the way through to you check out the repo, go into the site directory and add a document in the guides directory. We can meet you any way you want. I'm happy to help copy edit. Your experiences using this product are invaluable to others who are trying to get started.
Yeah, we'd be happy to contribute to docs or guides.
Great, that's outstanding.
We've actually gotten a number of docs contributions lately, so that's going well for the RC1 release. I was just looking at that blank contributor shoutouts section, and there have been a few in docs, so super appreciated. Doesn't have to be code.
Yeah, so two things. One, I will fix that and I'll make sure this is up to date with the contributors who've pitched in over the last month. The other thing is that as part of the website work, if you go to the community tab, all of the previous meetings, or most of them, are now referenced on there. I haven't found all the links to the YouTube videos, but I'll also post them on there. So the community page, as well as listing just the upcoming stuff, also has references to the previous meetings. So if you're kind of coming in late, you can read up. Also on the references tab are links to videos. We just added Steve CNCF webinar, and I believe a number of people speaking at KubeCon. I think KubeCon North America, and so we really want to drive traffic towards Project Contour.io as just everyone loves GitHub. Everyone loves putting code in repos, but there are different tools with different jobs. We really want to make the the website, its information architecture, usable to answer questions like, I want to try this, I have a specific use case. I think a lot back to 10 or 15 years ago when I first came across Nginx. I really like the way that they dedicate so much of their website they had this great big list of like, here are all the configuration options for each setting, but they had a much more accessible, how do I set up fast CGI? How do I proxy to upstream? Which is really the solutions that I was coming for. Like I need to replace Apache with a web server. How do I do this specific thing? How do I do proxy load balancing, or how do I do sticky sessions or something like that? And I want to create a space on the website to capture that information, because I think that's really going from a solution, like I have a question, I need a solution type thing, is a better way of presenting that information rather than just a big docs. I love our HTTP proxy page. It describes everything about the feature. Doesn't tell you anything about why you want to. It's reference documentation. And in the counterpoint to the reference documentation, you need to have documentation and guides that are focused more on solutions and how-to-Is and things like that.
And just another random tidbit about the resources and documentation. Feel free to bookmark this HackMD, because we're going to continue to use this one and just top post on it for each of these community meetings. So you don't have to dig around, find a bunch of links. So
We should link this from the community page too then.
yes, that too.
I know
that's really everything. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I just had well, you mentioned on it, but a bunch of us will be at KubeCon in November. So I know Nick and I are going to have a talk at EnvoyCon the Monday before KubeCon starts, and then I know Steve Wong and I have a talk about Envoy again at KubeCon itself, and then we'll be around the booth and all around that week. So would love to hang out and chat in person if anyone's around, going to attend. Well, I'll definitely be there.
I think everyone here on the team, with the exception of Dave, will be at KubeCon. I will definitely be at the booth quite a bit of the time as well.
I believe we have some swag. We have some Contour swag. So if you come by and mention mention a secret word, I don't know what that word is. Like just tell us, hey, do you remember us from the community call? I'm sure we can give you some Contour swag.
Just say DAG. Directed at Nicholas Graff would be okay also. So
yes. Come up and say, I heard you're a big DAG or something.
Some DAG swag.
We need a t-shirt like that or something.
I'm a giant DAG, yeah.
I'm part of the Contour DAG.
Well, if there are no more questions, we appreciate you coming and participating in this community with us. Please reach out on Kubernetes Slack. All of the links are in this HackMD as well as our community page. And like I said before, we'd love your contributions, no matter how big or small. You're what makes this project great. So thank you.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks. Good to see you again, Michael.
Thanks. Good to see you.
I won't see you
Welcome,
next month.
James.
Good to see you, Michael.
I won't see you next month at KubeCon, but the rest of the team will be there. So
You have to enjoy the Melbourne summer, is that right? Sydney summer.
It's a little bit overcast today in Melbourne. It's kind of cloudy, but it was nice yesterday. Maybe it'll clear up in the afternoon.
I get to drive to KubeCon this year. It's quite nice.
Sweet. I'll look for you.
Yeah, great. That'll be good. Catch up. I'll be wearing I'm a giant DAG shirt. I think only Australians are going to get that. But
I figured on this call it was a safe audience.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
See ya.